Moving on to part 2 of 214 right here. Last time we made a button right here, and you username, password, did a thing trying to make little background labels for it, just optional. You can play around with it. I'm gonna bump that up too. This button does nothing, but we have a button. It's called OK, but I don't want the button to say OK. I want it to say login. It's supposed to be my login button. There, it says login. I changed this size. It doesn't have to be 300 by 300, but no, 200 by 200 there. All right. So, what? Where did I leave off on? Interactivity. So we want to make this button interactive. Right now, it doesn't do anything, but we want to make it do something. And we have tools to make the buttons work and buttons function. Now, here's a little interactive video on how this is going to work. So right now we have our frame. So we got the window, authorization window. We got this frame right here inside the window, and we put our labels and buttons and stuff. Now, we're going to change the code of this button to add this option right here, the command option. The command option will run whatever function I put right there, like test my function. And then that, as soon as I hit the button, it's going to call the test my button function, which has a command in there that went by so fast that you didn't see it, that is going to bring a different frame up. So just like in the game activities where it was like on key press, when you hit a certain key, it could run a function. I think these behave in a very similar way. But the way that what we want it to have happen is that when I hit the login button, it goes to a new screen. And this is like the you have successfully logged in type page. All right. But like, how do you make that work? Do you have to open a new window? But you want it to be a new screen after someone logs in. But the way that we make this work is we actually have two frames. So we're going to have one frame on top of the other. So this is the login frame right here. After I hit the login frame, it's going to bring another frame from the background to the front and hide the login. So we don't actually create a new login. We're going to hide it with another frame. We just like change the layers. So that's how we kind of fake it. So how do we do this? Okay, so a few things. Step 19. We're going to add options row and column to frame logins grid call. So frame logins grid call right here. We're going to add two options. Row equals 0 and column equals 0. What do those do? It kind of sets the location in the grid, but it's really weird. I'll explain it. I don't even really understand it. I'd just be making up stuff. And I'll explain a little bit later. And we're going to add the sticky keyword that does news. I have no idea what this does. But they say I have to add it. So when I do this, nothing changes. Cool. Oh, the stick? It should be sticky. That zoomed in a lot. Do that on purpose? I don't know. Whatever. Cool. I don't know what sticky does, but it says I have to do it. And this kind of sets the position. And what they said is like row and column, that sets position in case like the frame size changes. And I think what it really is it sets position relative to other frames potentially on the screen. I'll show you later at the very end. I think it becomes relevant. Right now, before the call, so right before the call main loop, we're going to make a new frame called frame auth and call the grid method. So we're going to make our second frame. So down here after these buttons, and we can make it just like we did this frame up here. We're not call it frame login. We're going to call it frame auth. Same rules, same things in here. And then I'm going to hit the run button. And I have a blank screen. I have a blank screen. And what you might be like, what happened? What happened is I created this frame right here. I have the frame login, but as soon as I make the frame auth, it puts that frame on top of the frame login. So now so it's the other stuff's still there. It's just hidden. And there's nothing, this frame auth is blank and it's on top right now. So that's why. Now I want to bring that other frame back. I want to bring the other frame back. So in step 21, we're going to use a new function called TK raise. TK raise says, raise it to the top layer. So like if you're looking at like a like a picture and you have layers in an image you're trying to edit, you're bringing that layer to the top. Think about it in the same way. So right after this, I'm going to say frame, the login frame. So login, and I'm going to go TK raise. So now when I run this, it creates a login frame, all that stuff. It creates the auth frame, covers it, and then it's bringing that login frame back to the top. All right. So that's what was going on. I've added all of this stuff into my Python tkinter GUI commands. Yes, and there's a... All right, so now we're going to create a function. I made it raised up there. We're going to create a function just after the import of your program called test my button with no parameters. Like, what? How do I create a function? And so that means we go back and I'm just going to put new functions. I'm defined called test my button with no parameters. You know, they call this a function, but sometimes they also call these methods, right? Sometimes we use those words. I think methods and functions are pretty close on how they work. In my brain they are, but I think sometimes they use method when it's like a dot whatever, when it's part of some other object. But functions might be like when we define our own functions like this that are kind of like independent. I don't know. Anyways, I defined it. In the body of the function, include a call to frame auths TK raise with no arguments. So inside of this, we're going to go, because I have nothing. So we're going to go TK raise, but we're going to raise auth. Frame auth. So here's the goal here. When I click this button, I'm going to make it run this function that will bring the auth frame back to the top. So I've defined this function. I don't use it yet, but I'm going to go into where button is. And I think this is the next step here. Oh, it's step 25. I'm going to go into button, and you can add another option to this called command. This would be, this runs whatever function I put in here. So test my button. All right. Now watch what I can put stuff in here. It doesn't matter for now. And I hit login. Boom. Switches back to auth. Now my button works. It switches to the new frame. Cool. I wish it was like there was something in frame, but we'll do this in the next step. Like, how do you know it's really in frame? All right. So hopefully you got that to work. Now we're going to add, we want something to be in that frame. What the goal here in the lesson says, hey, let's make it just print out your password that you typed in. Paste the link in chat again. No problem. Error. Here it is. Enjoy. So what I want it to do is when I get to here, I'm going to have it just print out my password. And that's the next step in here. Now, they tell us to do this because they're going to tell us a new function in here, and it's called the config method. So you know how like when we create that label and we labeled it like made it say password, or if I go into my code, it said I can change this text to username, set the font, set the background. What if later on in my code I want to change those things? Well, I don't want to just do call label again because that'd make a brand new label. I want to just update these options. And I can update these options with the config method. So here's examples of how this works. I can make this label and I can set the text to password and the font to Arial as one line. This example 2 does the exact same thing. It will create the login label, and then this .config will update password and update the font to Arial. Go ahead and call these at any time. This might be useful if I want to like save information, or if I want to like change what like the text on the screen, say like login complete or whatever. So or maybe it changes based off the user typing in something and hitting the button. All right. So I've added onto here. Boom, boom, right here. Now, this asks you to go back to 213. You guys don't have to do this in my class. I don't care. It says, remember this thing that we did last time? And my class is like, no. You guys are crazy. Like, we skipped this. I was too confused. This was like a version of login. And they had a bunch of code in here. The point of going back to this is like, oh, now you might understand some of this code where you didn't last time. Because we're doing this now. Like, you see, oh, grid, that's a thing I know. Or title. Yeah. I've seen those words before. So you might be able to read that a little bit more. They use config in there. We're going to skip that part. We're going to go to 26. I want to make my GUI display the user's password on FrameAuth. And they give us a to-do list. So let's do to-do number 1. We're going to add a label to FrameAuth. The label is like the text. So I'm going to take this code. Nice. I'm sorry, copying. Best yet. I'll accept this. I'll make it work. So we're going to add a label to FrameAuth. Label. So I'm going to take, I want to add it to FrameAuth right here. But you might be like, hey, how do I make a label? I didn't do that since the last video. Let's take this label right here. Right there. And I'm going to copy this. I'm going to have to change the label name. I'm going to change this to label 2. Why not? And I don't care. I'll keep these same parameters. Now the text in here, I'm going to say your password. No. Wait, no. Better yet. We're gonna do something relevant to right now. Okay, bye GME. To the moon, folks. So I run this now. Oh, I don't want that label right there. Oh, because I was messing around with this. Did someone else mess around with this? Wait, what's going on? Oh, I want to make sure this is in the FrameAuth, not in FrameLogin. There we go. Right, like that. Now, when I hit login, switching to the FrameAuth side, by GME. There we go. I made the label work. Now, what if I want that text to be my password that I enter? So I have to do a little bit more steps in here. So next to do's, use the get method of an enter password when the button is pressed and store the result. You're like, what's the get method? Okay, when I say get method, that's going to be the get function. I think we did it last unit, but I know it's kind of random in here. What we're going to do, and actually read both of these, we're going to get the password that you entered in there, and then we're going to configure the label, use config, to change it to display that password. And we're going to have to do that when we hit the test my button. We're going to put that code in here. And it gives you the hint to do it right there. It says it should be in the body of the function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write, what's the first thing? Oh, I want to get that pass. So I'm going to write my password. I want to collect that password. And I'm going to say it's going to be whatever I do in the enter password. If you remember this, this is not going to run right now. Remember this. Oh, why is it not running? Did you guys crash it? No. You remember when okay, run this. Oh, I'm going to do that again. So I want to get whatever I put in this password. This box is based off this ent password thing right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the password, be ent password.get. This will grab whatever I entered in that password and save it into the password variable. And then I want to configure the label from FrameAuth. Instead of being by GME, I want to change that to that password. So I'm going to go to label2, because that was the name of that label. dot config, and we're going to change text to be equal to password. Watch what happens. I'm going to run this. My username, Jonathan Smith. And my password would be this. And I'm thinking this is going to be super secure. I hit that. What? That's not even what I typed at all. Oh! I didn't put the thingies around the get. It's okay. Jonathan Smith. My password would be and then that's his password. Isn't that annoying? Like, that's one of those weird errors that it doesn't even give you an error message. So you might be like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Luckily, it printed out for me. Python can be crazy like that. Like, they don't tell you what's wrong, or they don't tell you there's a problem because they say they let you just deal with it. But there I go. Yeah, question. All right, so mine works. I was playing around with it. Whatever. Username, I might have had different options, different people. Like, I changed the @ sign and stuff because I was messing around. Never figured out what this BD equals 3 thing does either. But the last part of this assignment, and I'm going to try playing around with it. It's kind of weird. We want to use the grid to oh, there's a question right here. Work with your partner and look back at multi-factor GUI. What % of it do you actually understand? A better question is, what % of this code do you understand? I don't know. But hopefully some of it. Now, this last part, I kind of skipped in class, but let's try it right here. You can choose to organize your widgets in a grid vertically, packing them one after another. However you want further control when the widgets appear, use the grid method. So we're going to use the grid to make these things. And this is where I want to go back to what I think how this row and column thing works. I still don't know what sticky looks like. But I was like, if I don't know what things look like, I go, oh, let's go back to my tutorial documentation. And I was like, columns and rows. Okay. I was trying to read. They tried explaining some of this. But what I think this does is I thought it was like the width and the length of the row of the column. So I started playing around like, okay, imagine if I took this frame and put row 1 and column 1. And you notice that like the other frames appearing side by side. In fact, I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it. Oh, I'm going to make this text bigger too. Lots of text. Test. So they're kind of doing side by side. And I'm like, what? That's kind of weird. Or what if I did like row 50 or row 50 and column 50? I thought they would be like, okay, row means it goes down 50 pixels and column means it goes right 50 pixels, right? That's what I would think. But it's actually not doing that. And then, well, what if I made column 0? And so the columns are the same, but now the rows are different. And I run it now, they go on top of each other. But if I did row 0 and column 50, they'll go side by side. Replit. Up to your old games. There you go, side by side. So what I think these are kind of like relative positions, because if I did column 1 and row 0, it would still be the same spot. And if I did column 1000, row 0, it's going to be the same spot. So I think what this does is, if I have a bunch of frames, it's just going to lay them out relative to each other based off rows and columns. So like if I made this row 1 column, I could do this. Row 1, column 1. Or what if I made this row 2, column 2, and that was 1, 1. What's going to happen is these are going to swap places. You're actually going to have frame auth in the top corner here. And this one's going to be down here. And like if I did annotate here, I think this will show you the frames a little better. And this is how I think it works out. There's one frame that's like this and one frame like this. So they kind of lay out that way. I don't know who just did that to me. Someone did. But that's what's going on. So they kind of lay relative to each other. So in the case when we had them as both row 0 and column 0, they would do exactly on top of each other, and that's why they cover up each other. But I think I understand that better now. And now that I understand this, I can make what they want right here in this lesson. See if I do this live. So I don't want to ruin what I've already created, so I'm going to fork this. Okay, so that's kind of weird. I don't want to mess with what I already created, so let's say I want to, even if after I erase these things. So I'm going to make a frame that's just a big blue square. You'll need to create 4 separate frames and find a way to position them. So I want to make a big blue square. So I'm going to make a new frame. Frame blue equals ek.frame root. And we're going to put this in the grid right here. And I'm going to put it right on top of those two. I don't care. I'm going to leave all this code in here. I don't know what news does. I would have to look up what grid does. ek enter grid commands. No, grid options. Okay. Sticky. Oh, what to do if it's larger than the widget. Okay, so that kind of anchors it. Got it. Okay. Oh, I can make column span and row span? Oh, but that's only going to matter for the grid. What I want to do is like put a big empty box in there somehow. How do I do that? I don't know. All right. A little research, I figured this out. So I can set this blue up here. It's not, oh, sure, I'll leave the sticky in here. But what we can do with the, actually, we want to do this in frame. We have a few options in frame here. You can do width. You can set the width equal to something. Let's say I made it like 200. I can set the height equal to like, I don't know, 50. And then there's also background, which changes the background color, just like I did up here. We can change this to blue. So if I did this one, it'd make a blue box background. What? Raised it? Oh. Duh. There, I made it. So you can change those sizes if I wanted to make like, I don't know, what did the rest of it look like? Okay, so green, red, yellow right there, right? So if I wanted to have a green one, so I'm going to go frame green. How does it do? The whole thing. And then I could change this. Maybe I want it to be a different column. I want to be next to it. And I want the width to be maybe like 100 and the height to be the same. And then we're going to make that green, whatever colors we want, and so on. You can do the others from there. If you wanted to do this spot right here, you're going to have to just change the row and change the columns. That idea. I think you get it. So I'm done here. See you later.